Our world runs on schedules, but it was not always this way. For our ancestors, the changing seasons were a mystery, and survival was a roll of the dice. This video reveals how prehistoric observatories synchronized entire civilizations with the stars, transforming chaos into order. You will discover the hidden purpose behind monuments like Stonehenge, and learn how ancient sky watchers built the first calendars using only stone and memory. How did a circle of rocks predict the solstice, and why did cultures across the globe align their temples with specific stars? The answers lie in a forgotten science that gave us timekeeping, agriculture, and society itself. What does it mean to live in rhythm with the cosmos? Their world was painted on a vast, dark canvas, lit only by fire and the cold light of distant suns. A family gathers in the chill of an ancient evening, their faces turned upward. They knew the stars as we know the faces of old friends, recognizing the same bright patterns returning season after season. But one night, a profound shift occurred. It was no longer enough to simply recognize the stars, they began to watch them. This was the moment cosmic consciousness was born, the pivotal leap from passive seeing to active, systematic observation. It meant noticing that the constellation that rose at dusk in the deep cold of winter was not the same one that appeared during the harvest. It meant marking where the sun set behind a distant hill, and realizing that point crept slowly northward as the days grew longer, then retreated south as the light faded. This was humanity's first foray into data science, a meticulous recording of celestial movements using nothing but memory, myth, and markers on the land. Archaeoastronomer Clive Ruggles describes this not as astronomy for its own sake, but as a practical, survival-driven necessity. By discerning order in the apparent chaos of the sky, our ancestors found a framework they could trust. The universe was not random, it operated on a grand, predictable schedule. This revelation was nothing short of earth-shattering. If the cosmos followed a rhythm, then human life could be synchronized to it. The next logical step was to build something permanent, a stone witness to capture these celestial cycles, and make that cosmic order a tangible part of their world. The most reliable anchor they found in that shifting sky was the sun's own journey. Every year, it performed a slow dance along the eastern horizon, rising a little further north each day until it seemed to pause, then reversing its path to the south. Those 2 moments of celestial stillness, the solstices, became the bedrock of ancient timekeeping. The summer solstice brought the longest day, a peak of light and warmth, while the winter solstice offered the longest night, a turning point where the light began its slow return. These were not subtle shifts, they were dramatic, undeniable events that anyone could witness with a simple horizon marker. A lone standing stone, a notch between 2 distant peaks, even a carved post, could be used to catch the first gleam of the solstice sun. This simple act of observation was a revolution. It meant a community could now define a solar year, a complete cycle from one winter solstice to the next. But some cultures took this principle and built it into the earth itself. In the rolling green landscape of Ireland's Boyne Valley, the great mound of Newgrange stands as a 5,000-year-old testament to this solar precision. For most of the year, its long, narrow passageway lies in profound darkness, but for a few precious minutes around dawn on the winter solstice, a precisely engineered roof box above the entrance captures the rising sun. A single, narrow beam of golden light travels the length of the stone passage, over 60 feet into the heart of the mound, to illuminate the central chamber. This was no accident of architecture. It was a deliberate, engineered moment of cosmic alignment, a guaranteed sign from the heavens that the darkest day had passed and the cycle of renewal had begun. Across the sea in Orkney, the chambered cairn of Micho performs a similar solar trick, its entrance corridor aligned to capture the setting sun of the midwinter solstice, flooding the interior with a warm, low light. This drive to monumentalize the solstice was a global phenomenon. In ancient Egypt, the great temple complex of Karnak was designed so that on the summer solstice, the rising sun would shine directly down its main axis, illuminating the inner sanctuary and the statue of the god Amun-Ra. These structures transcended their function as tombs or temples. They became colossal solar instruments, stone calendars marking the most critical dates of the year with unerring accuracy. By locking their most sacred architecture to the solstice sun, these societies did more than predict the seasons. They woven the fundamental rhythm of the cosmos into the very fabric of their culture and spirituality. With the solar year firmly defined by these stone sentinels, a new question emerged. How do you break that long year into smaller, more useful pieces to know when to plant, when to harvest, when to celebrate? Yet the sun's grand yearly march was only half the story. A more intimate, quicker rhythm pulsed in the night sky, one that demanded its own form of attention. The moon, with its silent transformation from a silver sliver to a glowing disk and back into darkness, became humanity's first short-term timekeeper. Its cycle, roughly 29.5 days, was impossible to ignore. It governed the powerful pull of the tides on coastal communities and seemed to whisper to the biological rhythms of life itself. To track this fickle light was to grasp a different kind of time, a monthly calendar that could organize life on a human scale. We find evidence of this meticulous lunar accounting in some of the oldest artifacts ever discovered. Take the Blanchard bone, a small reindeer antler excavated in France. Upon its surface are a series of carefully engraved arcs and notches, arranged in a serpentine pattern. After decades of study, researchers like Alexander Marshak proposed these were not random decorations, but a deliberate tally. The marks appear to record the phases of the moon over 2 monthly cycles, a prehistoric ledger etched in bone over 30,000 years ago. Picture the individual who held it, perhaps by firelight, adding one precise mark each evening, translating the abstract passage of nights into a physical, permanent record. This lunar calendar was profoundly practical. It allowed a community to schedule rituals that required darkness or full moonlight, to anticipate the best times for hunting certain nocturnal animals, or to track the gestation periods of their livestock. For early agricultural societies, it provided a reliable interval between planting, tending, and early harvests of fast-growing crops. But this lunar time created a fascinating puzzle. 12 of these moon cycles add up to only about 354 days, falling short of the solar year by roughly 11 days. If you only followed the moon, your seasons would slowly drift through the year, your spring planting festival eventually arriving in the heat of summer. Reconciling the moon's monthly rhythm with the sun's annual journey was one of the great intellectual challenges of the ancient world, giving rise to the Lunisolar calendar. This sophisticated system, used by cultures from the Babylonians to the early Chinese, periodically inserted an extra month to bring the lunar and solar cycles back into harmony. Some monuments suggest this deep lunar knowledge was carved into the landscape itself. At the Neolithic tomb of Noath in Ireland, the massive curbstones surrounding the mound are covered in intricate spirals and geometric patterns. Some researchers believe these are not mere art, but a complex code, potentially mapping the more obscure 19-year metonic cycle of the moon, where its phases repeat against the backdrop of the stars. The moon's ever-changing face offered a more personal, immediate kind of celestial clock, one that required its own language of marks and stones to decipher. Mist still clings to the damp earth as the first light touches the tallest monolith at Callanish. Here on the Isle of Lewis, slender stones twice the height of a person stand in a silent, cruciform pattern, a stark geometry against the soft Scottish sky. This is not a random arrangement of rocks, it is a deliberate configuration, an architecture of alignment. Sites like Callanish represent the pinnacle of the prehistoric observatory, where the very landscape was surveyed and sculpted into a permanent instrument for reading the heavens. Each circle was a carefully calibrated interface between earth and sky, with specific stones, gaps, and outliers positioned to frame celestial events with stone-cold precision. The debate about their purpose, whether purely ritual or fundamentally scientific, was ignited decades ago by astronomer Gerald Hawkins. By analyzing the alignments at Stonehenge with an early computer, he proposed it functioned as a complex astronomical calculator. While his specific claims were contested, he fundamentally shifted the conversation, forcing us to see these circles not just as temples but as integrated tools. To understand them, we must learn to read their silent language of alignment. The most common alignments are solar, targeting the solstice sunrises and sunsets. A single sight line from the center of a circle through a specific gap between two stones would perfectly frame the first gleam of the midsummer sun. But the architecture grew more sophisticated. Lunar alignments tracked the moon's more complex 18.6-year cycle, known as a major standstill. During this rare event, the moon rises and sets at its most extreme northern and southern points on the horizon, points often marked by distinctive stones or outlying pillars. At the ring of Brodgar in Orkney, the great circle itself, surrounded by a henge and ditch, creates a perfect artificial horizon. From within, an observer could watch the moon's slow dance along the perimeter, its position against the stationary stones revealing its phase and stage in its long cycle. Some circles even captured stellar alignments, locking onto the rising points of bright stars like Sirius or the Pleiades, which served as seasonal heralds. The circle, therefore, was not just a shape, it was a fixed reference frame. The sky rotated around the pole star, but the stones did not move. By memorizing which celestial body rose over which stone on a given night, a keeper of the calendar could know the exact time of year. These monuments were silent stone computers, processing the data of the cosmos for generations who understood their code. They transformed the vast, fluid movements of the heavens into a local, tangible map written in granite. Yet, this precise celestial knowledge was not an end in itself. It was a means to a far more urgent and earthly goal. The heel stone stands alone, a weathered sentinel watching the approach to the most famous stone circle on Earth. Today, thousands gather at Stonehenge to witness the summer solstice sun rise directly over its ancient bulk, a spectacle of modern pilgrimage. But to understand this place, we must look beyond the single day and see it as a blueprint, a project that evolved over more than 1,000 years. Its story begins not with the giant sarcens, but with a circular ditch and bank, and a ring of 56 mysterious pits known as the Aubrey Holes, dug around 3000 BC. This first phase suggests a lunar connection, with some scholars proposing these holes could have held wooden posts used to track the moon's complex cycle, potentially even to predict eclipses. Centuries later, the monument transformed. The iconic bluestones, transported over 140 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales, were arranged in a double circle. Why undertake such a Herculean effort? Archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson suggests these stones were not merely building material, but were considered sacred, perhaps believed to hold ancestral or celestial power, physically linking this Salisbury Plain site to a distant, mythic landscape. The final, staggering phase saw the erection of the massive sarsen stones, forming the outer circle and inner horseshoe of trilithons we recognize today. This is where the astronomical precision becomes undeniable. The entire monument is oriented on a solstitial axis. If you stand at the center on the summer solstice, you look northeast through the great arch of a trilithon, past the slaughter stone, to see the sun rise directly above the heel stone. In winter, the view reverses along the same line to the southwest, framing the sunset, but the alignments grow more intricate. The 4 station stones, positioned in a rectangle around the main circle, create lines that may point to the moon's most extreme rising and setting points during its major standstill. This was not a simple solar calendar, it was a multi-layered celestial engine. Stonehenge masterfully wove together solar cycles, lunar rhythms, and likely stellar observations into a single, monumental interface. It represents the apex of a society that did not just watch the sky, but engineered their world to mirror its order, creating a permanent stone synapse between the earthly realm of the ancestors and the eternal clockwork of the cosmos. Across an ocean and a world away from the standing stones of Europe, a different kind of celestial calendar was etched into a desert cliff. In the high, arid expanse of what is now New Mexico, the ancestral Puebloans built a civilization attuned to the stark rhythms of their sun-baked landscape. Their masterpiece was not a circle of monoliths, but a complex of sprawling great houses like Pueblo Bonito, with walls aligned with uncanny precision to the cardinal directions. Yet their most breathtaking astronomical instrument was carved by nature and refined by human genius. High on Fajoda Butte in Choco Canyon, 3 large stone slabs lean against a cliff face. Behind them, a spiral petroglyph is carved into the rock. For most of the year, it sits in shadow, but at noon on the summer solstice, a brilliant sliver of sunlight, a dagger of pure light, pierces the gap between the slabs and slices directly through the center of the spiral. On the winter solstice, 2 perfect daggers of light bracket the spiral on either side, and during the equinoxes, a single dagger of light touches the edge of a smaller, adjacent carving. This is the sun dagger, a phenomenon of such precise, repeatable alignment that its intentional design is undeniable. Archaeoastronomer Anna Sofer, who documented the site in the 1970s, described it as a sophisticated solar calendar, a way to mark the pivotal turning points of the year with a dramatic public display of light. The ancestral Puebloans did not need to move massive stones. They instead found a perfect natural arrangement and enhanced it, turning a sunbeam into a celestial clock. This independent invention speaks to a universal truth. From the misty hills of Britain to the deserts of the Southwest, human cultures separated by vast distances and millennia arrived at the same profound realization. To thrive, they had to read the sky, and to remember what they read, they had to build that knowledge into the world around them. Whether through towering trilithons or a slit of light on a cliff, the goal was identical: synchronization. Their survival, their ceremonies, their very sense of time depended on this hard-won harmony with the cosmos. This shared impulse would find perhaps its most ambitious expression in the heart of another civilization, where celestial observation became the engine of an empire. The Nile's annual flood was a heartbeat, a life-giving pulse that could not be predicted by watching the river itself. Its timing was a secret held by the sky. In ancient Egypt, this secret was decoded by the star Sopdet, the brilliant Sirius. Just before dawn, after a long period of invisibility, Sirius would reappear low on the eastern horizon, its first gleam heralding the imminent rise of the Nile's waters. This celestial event, the heliacal rising of Sirius, became the anchor point for an entire civilization. It marked the new year, a moment of rebirth so critical that it was woven into the fabric of the state. This was not casual stargazing, it was the bedrock of a divine mandate. The Egyptians lived by a principle called Mot, a concept of cosmic order, truth, and harmony that governed everything from the movement of the stars to the morality of society. The pharaoh was not merely a king, he was the living embodiment of Mot on earth. His sacred duty was to maintain this celestial order, to ensure the sun rose, the Nile flooded, and the seasons turned as they should. To fail in this duty was to invite chaos, known as Isfit, into the world. Therefore, every act of governance, from agriculture to architecture, became an exercise in cosmic synchronization. They built their world as a mirror of the heavens, and the proof is etched in stone. The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of better than 1/15th of a degree, an engineering feat that still baffles experts. Its descending passageways were once thought to point directly at the pole star of the era, Thuban, a fixed point of light in the northern sky. Temples were not just houses for gods, they were finely tuned celestial instruments. The temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, for instance, was oriented so that on the winter solstice, the rising sun would travel down its long central axis, through a series of progressively darker and more sacred halls, until its light finally illuminated the statue of the god in the deepest sanctuary. This was more than a spectacle. It was a ritual of renewal, a physical demonstration that the pharaoh and the priesthood were in alignment with the sun god Ra himself, actively participating in the daily rebirth of the world. This synchronization extended into the afterlife. The pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings in the world, are filled with celestial guidance. They describe the deceased pharaoh's soul ascending to join the circumpolar stars, the so-called imperishable ones, which never set below the horizon. His eternal destiny was to become one with the ordered, unchanging clockwork of the night sky. To aid in this journey, the ceilings of royal tombs were often painted as intricate star charts, known as decanal clocks, mapping the constellations and their movements throughout the night to serve as a guide for the eternal soul. Out of this profound need for order, the Egyptians gifted the world one of its first civil calendars, a solar calendar of 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 extra days. While it slowly drifted from the seasons, it was a monumental achievement in standardizing time for administration, taxation, and ritual. In Egypt, astronomy was not a separate science, it was the language of divinity and power. The state itself was a time machine, engineered through temple alignments and star observations to keep the cosmos and the kingdom running on a divinely appointed schedule. This drive to encode celestial knowledge into the very bones of a civilization reveals a pattern, a shared human impulse that stretches across continents, but it also raises a profound question. If these ancient observatories were so precise, so integral to survival and spirituality, why were they ultimately abandoned, their secrets buried by time? The desert of Egypt gives way to the lush jungles of the Yucatan, where another civilization mastered the sky with a precision that still takes our breath away. Each spring and autumn equinox, a crowd gathers before the great stepped pyramid known as El Castillo at Chichen Itza. As the sun begins its descent, a mesmerizing transformation occurs. The corner of the pyramid casts a series of triangular shadows down the northern staircase, merging with the stone serpent heads at the base to form the illusion of a giant, undulating snake slithering down from the heavens. This is Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity, descending to earth in a display of light and shadow that lasts for just a few minutes. It is a testament to architectural and astronomical genius so advanced, it feels like a message across the centuries. The Maya and their successors, the Toltecs who built this pyramid, did not merely observe the sky, they calculated it. Their understanding was not based on myth alone, but on a rigorous mathematical astronomy developed over generations of meticulous record-keeping. They tracked the movements of planets with astonishing accuracy, particularly Venus, whose cycle they calculated to within 2 hours over a 500-year period. This knowledge was encoded in their sacred books, like the Dresden Codex, which contains detailed tables for predicting solar eclipses and the phases of Venus, turning celestial events from mysteries into scheduled rituals. Their view of time itself was profoundly different from our linear march of days. For the Maya, time was sacred and cyclical, a series of repeating patterns woven by the gods. To navigate this divine tapestry, they developed not one, but several interlocking calendar systems that operated simultaneously. The two most important were the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar used for ritual and divination, and the Hob, a 365-day solar calendar for agriculture and civil life. These two wheels turned together like interlocking gears, creating a larger 52-year cycle known as the calendar round. For even grander stretches of history, they used the long count, a linear count of days from a mythological starting point, allowing them to place events on a timeline stretching thousands of years into the past and future. El Castillo is not just a temple, it is a four-dimensional calendar rendered in stone. Each of its four sides has 91 steps. When you add the single top platform, you get 365, a perfect representation of the solar year. The 9 terraces dividing the pyramid can be seen as symbols of the levels of the underworld, and the 52 panels on each side represent the 52 years of the calendar round. Every aspect of its design is a number, a date, a cosmic principle made permanent. This architectural encoding extends to other structures. The Caracol, a unique round tower at Chichen Itza, functioned as a sophisticated observatory. Its narrow, slit-like windows are aligned with the extreme northern and southern settings of Venus, and with the sunset on the equinoxes. Venus, associated with the warlike god Kukulkan, was of supreme importance, its appearances dictating the timing of warfare and royal ceremonies. By building observatories that tracked these cycles, the Maya were doing more than marking time. They were participating in the maintenance of the cosmos itself. Their pyramids were the engines that kept the sacred, cyclical machinery of the universe turning, ensuring the sun would rise, the rains would come, and the world would not fall out of its divine rhythm. While stone calendars stood fixed upon the land, another civilization mastered the sky from a platform of constant motion. For the Polynesian voyagers, the entire Pacific Ocean was their territory, a watery expanse twice the size of the United States, dotted with islands no larger than specks. They navigated this immense void not with sextants or compasses, but with a living, mental map of the heavens. Their observatory was not built from rock, it was built from memory, passed down through generations in an unbroken chain of oral tradition. This was a synchronization with the stars so intimate and dynamic, the vessel itself became a celestial instrument. At the heart of this knowledge was the star compass, a conceptual masterpiece. Picture the horizon as a great circle surrounding your canoe. Now divide that circle into 32 directional houses, like the points of a compass, but each house is defined not by a magnetic reading, but by the precise point where a specific star will rise and where it will set. A master navigator or wayfinder would memorize this mental grid from childhood. He knew that when the star called Hokulea, our Arcturus, rose in the house called Lee, he was on course for Hawaii. If it rose in the house called Monu, he was drifting south. The sky was not a static picture, but a rotating dome, and by knowing which bright star was passing through which house at a given hour of the night, he could always find his bearing. Modern wayfinder Nainoa Thompson, who helped revive this ancient art, describes it as a constant conversation with the cosmos. You are not just looking at the stars, you are feeling the canoe's movement beneath you. You are tracking a star's path across your mental horizon houses, and you are constantly updating your position in your mind's eye. But the stars were only one part of a deeper sensory language. Zenith stars provided a critical latitude fix. A zenith star is one that passes directly overhead at its highest point. The wayfinders memorized which zenith star belonged to their home island and to their destination. For Tahiti, that star is Sirius. As you sail, you watch for new stars to climb to the zenith. When Sirius is directly overhead, you know you have reached the latitude of Tahiti. Then, you use your star compass to sail east or west along that latitude line until you find the island. This celestial knowledge was woven together with an intimate reading of the ocean itself. Navigators learned to interpret the patterns of swells, refracting around islands and creating a telltale rhythm against the hull. They watched for specific species of birds whose flight ranges pointed the way to land, and they read the shapes and colors of clouds that often gathered over distant shores. This was a holistic science, a fluid dance between observer and environment. It represents a profound contrast to the monumental stone records of Europe or the Americas. Where Stonehenge or El Castillo fixed celestial knowledge in a permanent, public location, the Polynesian star compass was portable, personal, and alive. It existed only in the trained minds of the wayfinders and in the movement of their canoes across the star-lit sea. This was synchronization in its most active form, not merely marking time from a fixed point, but using the eternal stars to chart a course through the featureless now. Deep within the earth, the silence of a tomb is absolute. At Bryn Celyn in Wales, a narrow passage leads to a central chamber, a space built for eternal rest. But for one brief moment each year, this place of stillness is pierced by light. On the dawn of the summer solstice, a single, razor-thin beam of sunlight travels down the passageway to strike a single, intricately carved stone pillar at the chamber's heart. This was not a random occurrence, it was a meticulously engineered event, a phenomenon repeated across ancient Europe, revealing a belief system where death was not an end, but a point of synchronization with the cosmos. These burial mounds and passage tombs were designed as more than memorials. They were sophisticated astronomical instruments that connected the ancestors to the eternal cycles of the heavens. The most compelling feature is the light box, a small, carefully positioned opening above a tomb's entrance. At Newgrange in Ireland, this roof box is engineered so that for just 17 minutes around the winter solstice sunrise, a golden beam illuminates the dark inner chamber. In Portugal, the Anta do Olival da Pega tomb is aligned so the equinox sunrise shines directly down its corridor. This was a pan-European tradition, a shared architectural language speaking of light, renewal, and return. Archaeologists interpret this as a profound symbolic act, by allowing the sun, at its weakest point in midwinter, to penetrate the deepest place of the ancestors. These cultures were performing a ritual of cosmic renewal. They were linking the generative power of the sun with the spiritual power of those who came before. The tomb became a conduit, a portal where the cycle of a human life and the cycle of a solar year were symbolically united. The darkest day brought light to the realm of the departed, asserting a belief in continuity, in a rebirth that mirrored the sun's own promised return. These structures were calendars of the soul, stone vessels designed to catch a specific moment of celestial time and pour its meaning into the realm of memory and legacy. They tell us that for our ancestors, to measure the sky was also to measure the journey of life itself, weaving both into a single, enduring story written in earth and light. The horizon itself became a giant sundial, its notches and peaks serving as markers in a celestial clock. Across the open plains and high deserts, ancient cultures engineered a different kind of observatory, one that used the land itself as its foundation. These are the Petroforms, deliberate and intricate arrangements of stones laid upon the earth, transforming entire landscapes into permanent star maps and calendars. Far from random scatterings, these patterns held meaning for generations. The Big Horn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming, resting high on a windswept plateau, is a perfect example. From above, it reveals a precise stone circle nearly 90 feet across, with 28 spokes radiating from a central cairn and 6 smaller cairns around its rim. For centuries, it was seen as a sacred site, but its true function as a sophisticated horizon calendar was unlocked through careful analysis. Each of those outer cairns aligns with a specific point on the distant horizon. One points directly to the summer solstice sunrise, Others frame the rising points of bright stars like Aldebaran, Rigel, and Sirius at key times of the year. This was not a single-purpose monument. It was a multi-functional instrument, a ceremonial center where the community gathered, a trading hub where knowledge was exchanged, and an open-air school where the motions of the heavens were taught using the earth as a blackboard and stones as permanent notation. The entire wheel acted as a sighting device. An observer at the central cairn could look across an outer cairn to a specific notch between two distant mountain peaks. When the sun or a star rose in that exact notch, it signaled a precise day in the annual cycle, telling people when to begin a hunt, when to hold a ceremony, or when to prepare for a seasonal change. This principle of the horizon calendar is found globally. In Australia, Aboriginal peoples created elaborate stone arrangements, some forming pathways that mirrored the Milky Way or constellations within their dreaming stories. These were not static art, they were memory palaces built on the ground, encoding navigation routes, seasonal food sources, and ancestral lore into the very shape of the land. The Moose Mountain Medicine Wheel in Saskatchewan shows similar genius, its alignments capturing both solar events and the heliacal risings of stars like Aldebaran, which served as a pre-dawn warning of the coming solstice. By using the immutable horizon as their reference, these cultures built calendars that could not erode, calendars that tied their rituals and their survival to the slow, grand turn of the planet itself. The Petroform asks us to see the landscape as a living document, where every hill and stone was a word in a story written across generations. But this knowledge of stones and stars needed a voice to carry it forward. Before libraries or textbooks, the most vital information was stored not in monuments, but in memory, woven into the fabric of stories told under the night sky. Myths were not mere entertainment, they were the essential software for the hardware of stone observatories. A griot in West Africa begins a tale about the 7 bright stars of the Pleiades, describing them as 7 sisters being pursued. In ancient Greece, a storyteller recounts the myth of the hunter Orion, forever chasing those same 7 sisters across the heavens. These are not coincidences. They are examples of a global phenomenon where complex astronomical knowledge was encoded into mythology, ensuring its accurate transmission across countless generations without a single written word. Comparative mythologist Giorgio de Santillana pointed to the recurring archetypal themes found in star lore across disparate cultures, suggesting these stories served a profound practical purpose. They made the abstract motions of the cosmos relatable, memorable, and deeply personal. By turning star patterns into characters and their movements into epic narratives, ancient cultures created the ultimate mnemonic device. The constellation became a story, and the story contained the data. In Aboriginal Australia, the dark patches of the Milky Way are seen not as empty space, but as a giant celestial emu. Its orientation in the night sky throughout the year is critically important. When the emu in the sky appears horizontal in the early evening, its body stretched across the Milky Way, it is said to be running, and the emus on Earth are lean and not good for hunting. But when it appears standing upright with its head near the horizon, the story says it is nesting. This celestial signal tells people across the continent that the real emus are laying eggs, dictating the precise time for egg-gathering ceremonies. Here, a myth directly governs a seasonal, survival-based activity, synchronizing human behavior with a cosmic marker. Norse mythology offers another vivid example, embedding a celestial observation into a dramatic explanation for solar motion. The myth tells of 2 wolves, Skurll and Hati, who perpetually chase the sun and moon across the sky. The occasional success of Skurll in catching the sun was used to explain the terrifying event of a solar eclipse. This narrative transformed a frightening astronomical anomaly into a comprehensible story within a known cosmological framework, reducing anxiety and reinforcing the predictable order of the world. These stories did more than explain, they instructed. Polynesian navigation charts are dense with star lore, listing sequences of rising and setting stars that serve as sailing directions across the vast Pacific. To learn the chant was to learn the map. By embedding celestial synchronization into myth and song, these cultures ensured the knowledge became part of their very identity, passed from elder to child as naturally as language itself. The stone circle marked the solstice on the land, but the story of the sun's journey made that date live in the heart and mind of every listener, forever linking the rhythm of the heavens to the rhythm of human life. A researcher kneels beside a fallen megalith, its surface cool and rough under her hands. She is not an archaeologist in the traditional sense, nor is she solely an astronomer. She is part of a new kind of detective, working in a field that bridges both worlds, archaeoastronomy. This modern science asks a deceptively simple question: how did ancient people understand the sky, and how did that understanding shape their world? The answer requires more than just looking up. It demands looking down with fresh eyes, using tools like theodolites and sophisticated software to measure the precise angles of stone alignments against the horizon. This is the disciplined, evidence-based study of humanity's oldest relationship, our bond with the cosmos. Pioneers like Anthony Aveni helped define the field, moving it beyond speculation. He emphasizes that archaeoastronomy is not about finding alignments for their own sake, but about understanding the sky as an integrated part of ancient life, a source of time, direction, and meaning. The methodology is rigorous. First comes the meticulous survey, mapping every stone, every sightline, every notch in the horizon with exacting precision. Then comes the statistical analysis, a crucial step to determine if an alignment is intentional or merely a product of random chance. If you have 360 degrees on the horizon, some stones will accidentally point to significant solar or lunar events. The challenge is to prove a pattern. Finally, there is the ethnohistorical research, scouring myths, oral traditions, and early colonial records for clues about how a culture perceived the stars. This last piece is vital. It prevents what scholars call astroarchaeology, the mistake of imposing our modern, scientific world view onto people for whom the sky was alive with gods and ancestors. One of the greatest technical challenges is precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis over a 26,000-year cycle. The North Star was not always Polaris 5,000 years ago. It was the star Thuban in the constellation Draco. A temple aligned to a star's rising point in 3000 BC would not be aligned today. Modern software can rewind the sky, calculating precisely where every celestial body appeared on any date in the deep past, allowing researchers to test alignments as they would have been seen by the builders. This scientific lens allows us to reverse engineer the intellectual triumphs of prehistoric sky watchers. We are not just seeing a circle of stones, we are beginning to understand the meticulous observations, the generations of recorded data, and the profound conceptual leaps that turned random light into a reliable calendar. Archaeoastronomy gives a voice to those silent stones, translating their fixed positions into a story of human curiosity, ingenuity, and our enduring desire to find our place in a vast, ordered universe. The sky our ancestors knew was not the one that hangs above us tonight. Earth itself is in a slow, continuous dance, a subtle wobble on its axis like a spinning top beginning to tilt. This grand cycle, called precession, takes 26,000 years to complete a single rotation, and it changes everything about our view of the cosmos. The most immediate effect is on our pole star, the fixed point around which the heavens seem to turn. For us, that anchor is Polaris, but for the builders of the Great Pyramid over 4,000 years ago, the North Celestial Pole was marked by a different star entirely, Thuban, in the constellation Draco. That single fact forces a profound shift in perspective. When we stand at an ancient site and look for alignments, we must rewind the sky, calculating where the stars truly stood in the deep past, not where they rest now. This celestial drift is most dramatically seen in the precession of the equinoxes. Imagine the sun's path against the backdrop of distant constellations. The point where the sun rises on the spring equinox slowly slides backward through the zodiac over centuries. The constellation that once heralded the dawn of spring 2 millennia ago is not the same one that greets the equinox sun today. This means a temple aligned to the rising of a specific star on a solstice morning 3,000 years ago would capture an empty patch of sky if we tried to observe the same event now. The alignments are still there, etched in stone, but their celestial targets have silently migrated. This is not a flaw in the ancient design. It is a feature of our dynamic planet, and it provides modern researchers with a powerful tool. By identifying which star a monument sightline once pointed to, and calculating when that star occupied that precise position, we can potentially date the construction of the site itself. The Great Pyramid offers a compelling example. Its narrow air shafts leading from the king's and queen's chambers to the outside have long fascinated astronomers. Research suggests that around 2500 BC, when the pyramid was built, these shafts would have pointed directly at stars of immense importance to the Egyptians. The southern shaft from the king's chamber aligned with the belt of Orion, associated with the god Osiris, while the northern shaft targeted Theban, the pole star of the age. The southern shaft from the queen's chamber may have framed the star Sirius, the herald of the Nile's flood. These are not random holes, they are carefully engineered celestial sightlines frozen in time. To understand their purpose, we cannot look at our modern sky. We must reconstruct the exact tapestry of stars that the pyramid's architect saw. A sky where Theban, not Polaris, was the unmoving heart of the night. This slow drift of the heavens challenges us to shed our modern assumptions. We must learn to see the sky as a dynamic canvas, where the meaning of a stone alignment is not fixed for all time, but was precise for the generation that built it, a permanent record of a specific moment in Earth's long astronomical history. This realization deepens the mystery, for if the stars themselves are wanderers on a grand scale, what other celestial relationships have we missed because we were looking at the wrong sky? The success of an entire harvest could hinge on a single, faint glimmer in the pre-dawn sky. In the cool stillness before sunrise, a community gathers on a familiar hilltop, their eyes fixed on the eastern horizon where a distinctive cluster of stars, the Pleiades, has been absent for weeks. They are waiting for its heliacal rising, that first, brief reappearance just before the sun washes the stars away. This celestial event was not just a beautiful sight, it was an agricultural alarm clock. The heliacal rising of a specific star or constellation served as a flawless, weather-proof signal, a cosmic bulletin that told farmers across the ancient world the precise time to begin planting. This was the critical link between celestial observation and the Neolithic Revolution, the moment sky watching transformed from ritual into the very engine of settled society. To synchronize their sowing with this star rise was to dramatically reduce the risk of crop failure. Plant too early, and a late frost could kill the seedlings. Plant too late, and the crops would not mature before the autumn rains or the winter cold. The star's return offered a fixed date in a world without written calendars. This practice was a global phenomenon. For the ancient Greeks, the heliacal rising of the Pleiades marked the start of the sailing and farming season. For the Maori of New Zealand, the same cluster, called Matariki, signaled the end of the harvest and the beginning of the new year. In Egypt, it was the dazzling star Sirius, whose reappearance heralded the imminent, life-giving flood of the Nile. The Babylonians closely watched the three stars, our Orion's belt, for seasonal cues. Each culture identified its own celestial herald, a reliable point of light that cut through the uncertainty of changing weather patterns. This knowledge was then woven into the ceremonial fabric of the year, structuring the relentless work of survival into a meaningful, cosmic rhythm. Festivals like Beltane and Samhain in the Celtic world were not arbitrary celebrations. They were pivot points in the agricultural calendar, tied to the sun's position at the cross-quarter days between solstices and equinoxes. Beltane, around May 1st, marked the beginning of the summer growing season when livestock were driven to pasture. Samhain, at the end of October, signaled the end of the harvest and the onset of winter. These were moments of communal gathering, ritual, and realignment, ensuring that the work of the hands remained in harmony with the grand cycle overhead. The hilltop watcher was not just an astronomer, he was the keeper of the community's future, translating a silent signal from the cosmos into the most vital of earthly actions, the planting of a seed. The true power of celestial knowledge was revealed not in solitude but in the roar of a crowd. Picture the scene at a solstice dawn, the air thick with anticipation and wood smoke. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, have traveled from scattered homesteads and distant valleys, converging at the sacred circle. As the first sliver of sun breaks the horizon, perfectly framed by the great trilithon, a collective gasp ripples through the multitude. In that shared moment of awe under the aligned stones, something profound happens. Individual worries fade, and a powerful sense of collective identity takes hold. This was the ultimate purpose of the observatory, to forge social cohesion through cosmic timing. These festivals were the glue that bound a civilization together. The Inti Raymi ceremony of the Inca Empire was a masterclass in this principle. At the winter solstice, the Sapa Inca would preside over elaborate rituals in Cusco, the navel of the world. As the sun was ceremonially tied to a stone pillar to halt its retreat, the message was unmistakable. The ruler alone, through his priest astronomers, the Amotas, held the power to commune with Inti, the sun god, and ensure the sun's return and the empire's continued prosperity. This was not hidden knowledge, it was public theater of the highest order, a dazzling display that legitimized the entire social hierarchy. In ancient Europe, the midwinter feasts that would later influence traditions like Yule served a similar dual purpose. As the days grew shortest and fear of endless darkness crept in, the community gathered. They feasted on stored provisions, lit great fires to mimic the sun's strength, and shared stories. Anthropologists note that these timed rituals acted as a pressure valve, releasing the social tensions that built up during the hard winter months. By participating together in a ceremony that mirrored the cosmic struggle of light against dark, everyone renewed their shared contract, their mutual obligation to support one another and uphold the social order. The priest astronomers who could predict these events held immense, often exclusive, power. By monopolizing the calendar and the rituals, they positioned themselves as the essential intermediaries between the people and the celestial powers that governed their survival. An eclipse, terrifying and unpredictable to most, became a moment they could anticipate and ritualize, transforming chaos into a managed spectacle that reinforced their authority. This synchronization extended from the leader to the farmer. The festival date set by the stars dictated when taxes were due, when courts were in session, when armies could be mobilized. It created a universal rhythm that everyone in every walk of life could feel and follow. The vibrant music, the shared feasts, the collective prayers, these were not mere celebrations. They were the living heartbeat of a civilization that had learned to move as one, guided by the silent, predictable clockwork of the sky. The elder's voice is low, a steady rhythm against the crackle of the fire. Your eyes strain in the dimness, following the line of his finger as it traces a pattern of painted dots on the cave wall. A constellation you must learn to recognize not by sight, but by story. This was the classroom of the ancient world, the intimate and demanding space where the celestial clockwork was passed from one generation to the next. The survival of an entire community depended not on written manuals, but on this fragile, unbroken chain of human memory. The master-apprentice model was the engine of this transmission, a system built on total immersion and sacred trust. An initiate chosen for their keen observation and sharp mind would spend years, sometimes decades, at the side of an elder. Learning was not a lecture, it was a lived experience. They would travel to the observatory sites at the precise moment of a solstice or equinox, feeling the chill dawn air, watching the light hit the marker stone, and hearing the specific chants that belonged to that day. The knowledge was woven into the very fabric of the ritual, making it impossible to separate the astronomical fact from the ceremonial act. This ensured accuracy, as the data was encoded in multiple ways through the body, the voice, and the emotions. To remember the date was to remember the pilgrimage, the cold, the smell of burning herbs, and the elders' teaching story. The primary tools for this were mnemonic devices of breathtaking ingenuity. Complex star paths were set into songs with repetitive, rhythmic structures, their verses acting as sequential instructions. Dancers physically acted out the movements of celestial bodies, with specific steps representing the journey of the sun along the horizon or the moon's phases. Intricate artwork on pottery, textiles, and body adornment served as portable star charts, their symbols a refined language understood only by the trained. A stunning example is the Nebra sky disk, a bronze artifact from over 3,600 years ago found in Germany. It is not merely decorative, it is a functional model. A cluster of gold dots represents the Pleiades. A golden orb and crescent depict the sun and moon, and arcs along the edge mark the solstitial sunrises and sunsets. This was a physical reference, a teaching aid for initiates to hold in their hands, translating the vast night sky into a tangible, durable map. Anthropologists who study oral traditions note their remarkable fidelity over centuries when the knowledge is considered sacred and the teaching method is rigorously structured. The system often relied on compartmentalization for security and stability. The full celestial puzzle was rarely held by one person. A master navigator knew the star compass and swell patterns intimately, but might not know the precise prayers for the zenith star ceremony. The calendar keeper, who could calculate the interlocking cycles of sun and moon, might have no knowledge of the secret names for the constellations used in healing rituals. The priest astronomer understood the temple alignments and eclipse cycles, but not necessarily the folk songs that told farmers when to plant based on the Pleiades' rise. This distribution meant the community's survival was never dependent on a single individual. It was a collective tapestry of knowledge, where each holder was a guardian of one essential thread. The young initiate in the cave was not just learning facts, they were being woven into that tapestry, becoming the new memory for their people, the next fragile, vital link in a chain of synchronization that stretched back to the very first person who looked up and saw not chaos, but a story waiting to be told. The Nebra sky disk feels cool and heavy in your hands, its bronze surface tarnished with age but its golden inlays still catching the firelight. This is not a monument anchored to a hilltop, but an observatory you can carry, a personal map of the heavens forged over 3,600 years ago. Its design is deceptively simple, yet each element speaks a precise astronomical language. A large golden circle and a crescent represent the sun and moon, while a cluster of 7 smaller dots unmistakably depicts the Pleiades star cluster. But the most ingenious features are the 2 golden arcs added to its edges later. Researchers believe these arcs each span exactly 82 degrees, a measurement that corresponds to the angle between the sunrise points on the horizon at the summer and winter solstices at the disk's likely origin latitude. This transforms the object from a mere picture into a functional instrument. Held horizontally and aligned with the horizon using the arcs, the disk could have been used to teach or to calculate the solstice dates, synchronizing the lunar symbols on its face with the solar year. Was it a ritual object for a priest, a teaching device for an apprentice, or perhaps a potent symbol of authority? A ruler who controlled this calendar held the power to dictate the rhythms of planting, harvest, and ceremony, unifying scattered communities under a single cosmic schedule. This drive to miniaturize the cosmos appears across the ancient world. In Denmark, the Trundholm Sun Chariot, a bronze statue of a horse drawing a sun disk on wheels, is thought to represent the sun's daily journey across the sky, a moving model of the celestial cycle. Among the Maya, skilled artisans crafted eccentric flints, intricate ceremonial blades shaped not for cutting but for holding. Their forms often mirror cosmological symbols, constellations, or even the precise angles of Venus's path, serving as portable, sacred diagrams of celestial order. These artifacts reveal a crucial truth. Synchronization was not just etched into the landscape, it was woven into the very objects of daily and ceremonial life. A leader could hold the sky in his hands, a priest could trace the moon's path on a pot, and a traveler could carry a star chart on a pendant. The cosmos was not distant, it was intimate, a constant companion made tangible in bronze, stone, and flint, ensuring its rhythms were never forgotten. The stone circle still stands, but fewer now gather to watch the light pierce its ancient gate. A profound transition was underway, one that would move humanity's gaze from the monumental horizon to the marks on a clay tablet. The age of building vast public observatories began to wane, not because the stars lost their meaning, but because the tools for understanding them evolved. The rise of powerful, centralized empires created a new need: meticulous record-keeping for administration, taxation, and state ritual. This demand gave birth to scribble classes, and with them, the technology that would change everything: writing. Knowledge that was once encoded in stone alignments and communal memory could now be recorded, copied, and transported. Astronomy shifted from a public, architectural practice rooted in a specific place to a private, scholarly pursuit that could travel. The great celestial clockwork was no longer solely told by the relationship between a monolith and a mountain notch. It was documented in lists and tables. In Mesopotamia, scribes pressed cuneiform into damp clay, creating compendiums like the Emuel, Apin tablets. These were not stories but meticulous catalogues listing stars, planets, and their heliacal risings, along with crude schemes for predicting planetary motions. This was a revolution in precision and portability. A priest astronomer in Babylon could now consult a standard reference, a shared body of data that was consistent from one city to another, synchronizing the calendar of an empire through text rather than local landscape features. The Greeks would later build upon this, with thinkers like Hipparchus developing more abstract geometrical models to explain celestial motions, moving the discussion further into the realm of mathematics and theory. Historians of science note this as a pivotal demystification, yet also a form of democratization within the literate elite. You no longer needed to pilgrimage to Stonehenge or Chichen Itza to access core astronomical knowledge. You needed a scroll and the education to read it. This textual shift was mirrored by a parallel revolution in personal timekeeping. The gnomon, a simple sundial, liberated communities from needing a horizon calendar for daily rhythms. By measuring the moving shadow of a vertical rod, anyone could divide the day into hours. More complex devices like the armillary sphere, a model of the celestial spheres with rings representing the equator, ecliptic, and meridians, allowed scholars to visualize and calculate celestial positions indoors. The synchronization of human life with the cosmos continued with relentless ingenuity, but the interface changed. The conversation between humanity and the heavens became less about experiencing a shared spectacle at a sacred site, and more about decoding data in the quiet of a library or the courtyard of an academy. The bond remained, but it was now held in the hand as well as etched upon the land. That same impulse to align with the cosmos did not vanish with the last stone circle, it simply changed its medium. The next time you look at a satellite map of a modern city, pause for a moment. The rigid grid of streets in places like Washington, D.C., or the sprawling plan of New York are not accidents of modern engineering. They are the latest chapter in an ancient story, a direct inheritance of that prehistoric drive to impose celestial order upon the chaos of the land. Our modern world is still built upon the bones of astronomical alignment, even if we have long forgotten the original stargazers who inspired it. The most pervasive legacy is cardinality, the sacred division of space into north, south, east, and west. This fundamental organizing principle, derived from millennia of watching the sun's path and the rotation of the stars, became the invisible template for civilization. When Roman surveyors laid out their military camps and cities, they began by using a simple instrument called a groma to sight the cardinal directions, ensuring every street and building was oriented to this cosmic cross. That Roman practice never truly died. Centuries later, when Pierre-Charles L'Enfant designed the capital of the United States, he imposed a grand diagonal grid over the landscape, with the Capitol building positioned as a symbolic center of this ordered universe. The National Mall itself stretches along an east-west axis, a monumental expression of solar alignment reborn in marble and granite. This cardinal logic extends far beyond capitals. For over 1,000 years, Christian churches across Europe were built with their altars facing east, toward the rising sun and the symbolic resurrection. The faithful would literally pray toward the dawn, physically synchronizing their worship with the solar cycle. Architectural historians see this tradition as a direct continuation of ancient solar reverence, with the Gothic cathedral's rose window acting as a kind of cosmic mandala, a stone representation of the ordered heavens filtering colored light into the sacred space. The farmer plowing his field into long, straight rows aligned to the cardinal points is participating in the same tradition, organizing the fertility of the earth according to a directional logic born in the stars. Our very tools betray this deep-seated need. The surveyor's transit and the modern GPS are technological descendants of the sighting poles and horizon markers of old, all created to translate the abstract geometry of the sky into precise lines on the Earth. The global coordinate system of latitude and longitude is perhaps the ultimate expression of this, a planet-wide grid that allows us to pinpoint any location, a system whose conceptual origin lies in the celestial sphere imagined by those first astronomers. We navigate our world using a map that was first drawn in the stars, so while we may no longer gather at a henge to watch the solstice sunrise, we live, work, and worship within frameworks established by those who did. The alignment is now buried in concrete and asphalt, but it is no less present, a silent testament to humanity's enduring quest to find our place within a vast and orderly cosmos. The stones of Stonehenge stand silent through the winter, but on the morning of the summer solstice, a different kind of energy fills the air. A circle of modern druids wrapped against the dawn chill watches the horizon. They are not archaeologists, yet they are here for a reason that would be deeply familiar to the site's original builders, to mark a moment of celestial alignment and to feel a connection to a rhythm far older than themselves. This scene, repeated at ancient sites worldwide, points to a powerful modern movement, the revitalization of ancestral sky knowledge not as a relic, but as a living, breathing part of cultural identity today. This is far more than historical reenactment. It is often an act of reclamation. For many indigenous communities, this revival is a profound reconnection with a heritage that was disrupted or suppressed. In Hawaii, the practice of wayfinding was nearly lost after centuries of cultural change. Then, in the 1970s, the Polynesian Voyaging Society built the hokulea, a traditional double-hulled canoe, and embarked on a journey to relearn the ancestral art of non-instrument navigation. Master navigators like Mau Piailug from Micronesia shared the star compass and wave-reading techniques, knowledge passed down orally in his culture for generations. When the Hokulea completed its voyage from Hawaii to Tahiti using only these ancient methods, it was not just a nautical triumph, it was a cultural resurrection. It proved that the knowledge was not a myth but a sophisticated, functional science, and it ignited a renaissance of Polynesian identity, language, and pride that continues to inspire young people across the Pacific. This movement highlights the dual nature of this celestial wisdom. For the academic, it is a dataset, a puzzle of alignments and cycles to be decoded. For the descendant community, it is a living heritage, a framework that contains spiritual values, ecological ethics, and a sense of belonging to a specific place under a specific sky. In Australia, initiatives like the Star Lore Project work with Aboriginal elders to document celestial knowledge before it is lost. These are not just lists of star names, they are intricate narratives that link constellations to the land, to animal behavior, and to lore. The emu in the sky story, for instance, directly governs the timing of the egg-gathering season, embedding a sustainable harvesting practice within a celestial map. Similarly, the Navajo Nation has undertaken extensive work to recover and preserve their own celestial terminology and cosmology, understanding that this language holds keys to their philosophy and their relationship with the natural world. Cultural practitioners from these communities often speak of the wisdom embedded in these systems, a wisdom that sees humanity not as separate from the cosmos, but as a participant within it. This perspective offers an alternative to a purely mechanistic view of the universe, reminding us that our ancestors synchronized with the stars not just to survive, but to find meaning, to tell stories that connected the soil to the stars. The revival of these traditions shows us that the impulse to synchronize is not a closed chapter in a history book. It is a living philosophy, one that continues to ask us where we stand in the grand order of things and how we might listen once again to the ancient rhythms written in light. But this profound legacy of human achievement has been shadowed by a persistent modern myth. A popular narrative suggests the precision of Stonehenge or the pyramids could only be the work of visitors from another world, a theory that fundamentally disrespects the ingenuity of our ancestors. Archaeologist Kenneth Feder calls this the alienation of the past, a tendency to strip ancient peoples of their own accomplishments. The truth, however, is far more compelling. These monuments are not evidence of lost technology, but of gained knowledge, built through generations of patient observation and ingenious, iterative engineering. Consider the blue stones of Stonehenge, transported over 140 miles from Wales. This feat seems superhuman until we examine the simple, effective methods available. Experiments have shown that teams using wooden sledges, rollers, and ropes could move massive stones across land. For water transport, they could have used rafts or simply floated the stones buoyed by logs. This was not a single Herculean effort, but a communal project that could have unfolded over decades, with each generation adding its labor and learning to the last. The alignment of these stones required no laser guidance, only a profound understanding of shadows and sightlines. By placing a central stake and tracking the tip of its shadow throughout the day, an observer can trace a perfect east-west line. From there, using simple chords to create right angles, they could establish the cardinal directions with remarkable accuracy. A line of posts could then be set to frame the rising point of a solstice sun, and over years, that alignment could be refined and finally set in stone. The Great Pyramid's near-perfect cardinal alignment is another triumph of low-tech precision. Researchers like archaeologist Mark Lehner have demonstrated how the Egyptians could have used the circumpolar stars, which rotate around the north celestial pole, to find true north. By marking the rising and setting positions of a single star on a circular wall, then bisecting the angle, they could pinpoint north within a fraction of a degree. This method requires no advanced instruments, only meticulous, repeated observation over many nights. The pyramid's level base was likely achieved using simple water-filled trenches as a giant level, proving that profound accuracy stems from clever application of basic principles, not mysterious outside help. To attribute these wonders to aliens is to miss the real story, a story of human curiosity that spanned centuries. A master builder did not simply arrive with a blueprint. He inherited the partial successes and failures of his grandfathers. Each generation corrected the alignment by a hair's breadth, perfected the stone-moving technique, and recorded their findings in oral tradition. This slow, collective accumulation of knowledge is how civilization itself was built. Celebrating these sites as human triumphs is not diminishing their wonder, it amplifies it. They stand as eternal testaments to what we can achieve through shared purpose, patient observation, and the relentless, awe-inspiring ingenuity of the human mind. Our ancestors lived on the edge of a vast and terrifying unknown. A sudden storm could wipe out a season's food, an unexpected illness could take a loved one, and the changing seasons themselves were a mystery that held life and death in the balance. In the face of this relentless uncertainty, the human mind seeks one thing above all: a pattern. It is a deep, cognitive drive to find predictability in chaos, and this is precisely what the stars offered. By discerning the unwavering cycles of the sun, moon, and planets, our ancestors did more than create a calendar. They built a psychological sanctuary. Cognitive archaeologists suggest that this act of celestial pattern recognition was a fundamental coping mechanism. When everything else in life was variable and fraught with risk, the heavens provided a constant. The winter solstice would always arrive, the Pleiades would always reappear before dawn, and the sun would always begin its return journey north. This predictability reduced a profound background anxiety about the world. It fostered a crucial sense of agency, a feeling that even if they could not control the weather, they could at least anticipate its turns and prepare. By projecting an intelligible order onto the cosmos, they created a stable mental model of reality, a map for the human psyche. Psychologists note that rituals tied to these predictable cosmic events serve a powerful purpose. They transform abstract time into meaningful experience. The act of gathering at the stones for the solstice, of chanting the old stories as a specific star rises, these are not empty traditions. They are ceremonies that embed the individual within a story much larger than themselves, providing a profound sense of place and purpose. This ritual framework helps mitigate existential dread, the fear of a random, meaningless universe. Instead, the narrative says you are here now, participating in a moment that has occurred for generations and will occur for generations to come. You are a conscious part of a grand, cyclical drama. The construction of observatories and calendars was, therefore, an act of world-building in the most literal sense. It was the crafting of a cosmos that made sense, where human life was not a fleeting accident, but an integral, timed component of a majestic and orderly whole. This was not merely about physical survival, it was about psychological and spiritual coherence. It was about creating a world where the mind could find rest, because the sky itself told a story of eternal return and reliable rhythm. That deep-seated need to find meaning in the cosmos, to see our own rhythms reflected in the heavens, never truly left us. It simply found new expressions, quietly shaping the way we still seek to understand our place in an expanding universe. Light pollution now veils the stars that once guided every human culture, a constant glow that severs our most ancient connection. We have gained illuminated streets but lost a fundamental sense of scale and place in the cosmos, a disconnection that echoes in our struggle to address planetary challenges that unfold over centuries, not quarterly reports. The builders of those stone circles offer a corrective to this short-sightedness. a model of what modern thinkers call long now philosophy. To erect a monument that would only reach perfect alignment generations after your own death requires a breathtaking kind of faith in the future. You are not building for yourself or even for your children, but for your great-grandchildren, trusting they will understand and continue the work. This multi-generational project management stands in stark contrast to our often frantic, short-term cycles. It whispers that the most important things, whether a stable climate or a cultural legacy, cannot be built in a single lifetime. They require a sustained, synchronized effort across the ages. The deeper lesson lies in their holistic vision. For the sky watcher at Misho or the Mayan calendar keeper, there was no compartmentalization. Astronomy was not separate from agriculture, engineering was not separate from ceremony, and ecology was not separate from spirituality. All were threads in the same woven fabric, a single system where the movement of Venus dictated the timing of both ritual and planting, where the solstice sunrise governed both temple orientation and community gathering. This integrated worldview is what sustainability advocates point to as a lost wisdom. Author and farmer Wendell Berry speaks of the need to solve for pattern, to address problems not in isolation but as interconnected symptoms of a whole system out of balance, much like our ancestors viewed human life as part of a cosmic system. Re-engaging with the night sky, even in small ways, can seed this perspective. To look up and recognize a constellation is to momentarily step out of the human timeline and into deep time, fostering a sense of temporal humility. You are seeing the same light that guided a Neolithic shepherd, a Polynesian navigator, a Maya priest. That simple act can cultivate a form of planetary citizenship, a feeling of belonging to a story and a system far larger than our immediate concerns. The ultimate insight from the ancient observatories is not about prediction or control. It is about attunement. They sought not to command the seasons, but to understand their rhythm and harmonize with it. Their synchronization was an act of listening, of aligning human community to the pulse of a living cosmos. In an era of climate disruption and social fragmentation, this is the wisdom we must recover, the recognition that our survival and our meaning depend not on dominating the system, but on rediscovering our respectful place within its grand, enduring rhythm. The journey from those first campfires to the heart of monumental circles reveals a profound truth etched not just in stone, but in the very structure of human society. We have traced the Nile's life-giving floods to the rising of Sirius and followed Polynesian voyagers across an ocean guided by a mental star compass. The evidence woven through these stories is overwhelming and clear. Prehistoric observatories were never monuments to primitive superstition. They were the world's first sophisticated instruments, brilliant tools of stone and shadow engineered to synchronize entire civilizations with the reliable rhythm of the stars. This hard-won synchronization was the bedrock upon which we built everything that followed. It gave us the predictable calendar that made agriculture possible, transforming nomadic life into settled community. It provided the shared schedule that forged social order, uniting scattered people under a common celestial law. It inspired the myths that gave meaning to existence, turning cold points of light into epic narratives of gods and ancestors. This was humanity's first great scientific and spiritual triumph, born not from advanced technology, but from observation, patience, and collective intelligence passed carefully from one generation to the next. Today, we tell time with the silent blink of a digital watch and navigate with signals from satellites in silent orbits. Yet the foundation of all this precision was laid millennia ago by people who first dared to measure the light and find their place within its grand design. The ancient call of the stars that guided them still echoes, a quiet invitation just beyond the glow of our cities. On your next clear night, step outside and look up. Find a familiar constellation like the steadfast bowl of the Big Dipper or the delicate cluster of the Pleiades. In that moment of connection, remember you are part of an unbroken story. It is a story that began when a human, long ago, looked at the wandering dots of light and saw not chaos, but a map, a clock, and a home. If this journey through cosmic time resonated with you, we would be grateful if you helped us keep exploring history's greatest mysteries. Consider subscribing to join our community of curious minds and share your own thoughts or questions in the comments below. The conversation, like the stars overhead, is always continuing.